I will introduce the guest curator of this afternoon to you, and that is Hamja Ahsan. I will share his bio, and you can also check our website or Hamja's website for more information, more complete information. But Hamja is a London-based artist, writer, curator, and activist, known for his book Shy Radicals, Antisystemic Politics of the Militant Introvert, which advocates for a utopian society for introverts and neurodiverse individuals. His artwork, Aspergistan Referendum, won the grand prize at the 2019 Ljubljana Biennial. Ahsan's work reaches out to social justice, mental health, and Muslim diasporic communities. He co-founded DIY Cultures, a festival celebrating zines and activism, and was shortlisted for the 2013 Liberty Human Rights Award for his role in the Free Talha campaign. In 2019, he participated in Art and Protest, What's There to Be Mad About, curated by Dolly Sen at Bethlehem Gallery in London. And recent shows are with Documenta 15 in 2022, The Possibility of Not Having Been, 7 decolonial interferences at Santa Monica in Barcelona, 2023, and Absensed at Malmö City Library in Sweden in 2024. Hamja is also part of the editorial collective for Asylum, the radical mental health magazine. Hamja, the floor is to you, and to your guests, of course, Sarah Brown and Ipek Buchak.
My name is Hamja Ahsan, Commander-in-Chief of the Revolutionary Internationalist Militant Movement for Shy, Introvert, Awkward, Quiet and Neurodivergent Peoples, known as Shy Radicals, and I am on a never-ending world tour to overthrow the ideology known as extrovert supremacy. I will not stop touring until that oppressive ideology and the entire neurotypical world order is usurped, reconstructed, and finally defeated. And here I am in Amsterdam today. So I'm adapting this text from Sarah's book, but to our present circumstances. So there was a call from our Intifada movement to break away and form new territory. It is one thing to make institutions safe, but what about the world outside the asylum doors? Medications and therapies are not enough. Citizenship, the state, the law, public space need to be dismantled and reordered. Draft Constitution for the Shy People's Republic of Aspergistan. We, the peoples of Aspergistan, embody the Shy People's Republic of Aspergistan, the sanctuary, beacon and homeland of oppressed, shy, introvert and autistic spectrum peoples, and understand that our nation's crowning principles will serve as a bulwark against the hegemony of the extrovert world order, making a decisive step towards a fraternal and curatorial collaboration and coexistence of all shy peoples in autonomous worldwide union. acknowledge that successive generations of our people have suffered rejection, bullying, humiliation, belittlement, pathologization, persecution, subjugation, exploitation, erasure, exclusion, alienation, discrimination, and disadvantage at the hands of the global system of extrovert supremacy, which has dispossessed and deprived us of our right to introspective life, self-esteem, equality, and peace. Demand the reversal of the operations of extrovert exclusive representation in Congress and debate chamber parliaments, acknowledging the system's failure to listen to and represent its subjects and citizens. We take Lao Tzu's dictum, the quieter you become, the more you're able to hear. As a founding principle of our democratic institutions, cherish the richness of our inner life, silence, contemplation, reflective solitude, intimate company, investigative depth, peer-reviewed truth, which forms the basis and legitimacy of the state and government to determine our destiny. So through caring for a brother who had been diagnosed with autism spectrum whilst in prison under detention without trial, which is the Free Talha campaign mentioned in my biography, I came to read a lot of autistic peer literature and publishing and forums, and yet this common thing came up. We're like second-class citizens, and so I thought, let's take this literally. How could you transform citizenship itself? And as part of the war on terror, there's been new powers such as citizenship stripping. So you have British citizens like Madi Hashi being stripped of their citizenship. So that was the context in which I found myself in. And I am actually suspicious when I hear institutions say words like care and decolonial and even accessibility and even neurodiversity, which has now become this ubiquitous term. I do develop some degree of skepticism when things become too ubiquitous. So one of the things I stumbled upon, which is certainly not Aspergistan, is this neuro village in Bali, Indonesia. And yeah, you can have packages of for entrepreneurial packages at $5,000 US or $3,000 US in sites which are actually graveyards of former communist leftists who were killed during the Jakarta method in the 1960s as part of the Cold War. And yeah, this was probably one of the peaks of, I shouldn't start with cynicism, sorry. I use the term shyness and neurodivergence. They're often terms that come before formal diagnosis. So you have the American Psychiatric Manual, the DSM, and the entire history of pathologization. So I've been diagnosed with social anxiety disorder, and then in my teens, as I failed and dropped out of high school, contact with adolescent psychiatric services, and then diagnosed with various affective disorders. And this is an early definition of schizophrenia, which has its closeness to shyness and oversensitivity. And inhabiting the word neurodivergence, it's not so much because I have a missionary belief in this new, I would say, fashionable term, neurodiversity. It's because it's indeterminate. So it's not quite whatever symptoms or zoological classifications are in the diagnostic manual. And one person who really strikingly influenced me was this artist called Helena Walsh. So she's from occupied Six Counties Island, also known as Northern Ireland. And she suffered from hunger strike, from an eating disorder, and she redefined the eating disorder as a hunger strike. And then I also thought of ways in which to redefine my own sort of various diagnosed pathologies. So rethinking of depression as, say, the body's natural capacity to go on strike. A strike being something that's neither in positive thinking terms or negative, but an affirmation of something. So this is the lexicon of democracy. So much of how politicians communicate in Parliament, and you'll see it every election time. And I wondered if all these forms of communication, whether it's biting your nails or turning your back or curling up in a ball, the register forms of contentment and discontentment, they are languages. So, say if in Parliament one was permitted to curl up in a ball or turn your back or stare at the floor or stare at the ceiling or stare at the sea, how would power be different? How would discontentment and representation be? Why are only certain personality types represented in what can be parliamentarian? And the symbol you see in the corner there, that's the shy power salute, which I'll go on to. It's a bit like a cough. So I don't always fit into leftist movements which I inhabit. So they're very sort of thrust in the air of black power and solidarity. And also during the Occupy movement, you had all these signals like consensus and loud speak louder. So they were all inadequate languages. As much as these movements claim non-hierarchical statuses or non-normativity, they are normative towards the ideology of extrovert supremacy. And so I feel quite, I've been touring this book for 8 years, and I found there's been more quiet hours and introverts welcome, and there is a certain consciousness. Even Freshers Week in some universities I've spoken at, they have introvert book swaps. So some of this language is registered as I tour, and it's also tied in with your entire embodiment as sort of subservient to capital, and so these aspects of yourself which are non-employable, non-quantifiable, like how do we register and value these things? These are some more power poses, and these are some more lexicons of democracy. Like Wonder Woman. And these are some more power poses. Starfish pose. CAO pose. I was always, when I was in primary school and secondary school, I was always coerced or disciplined or corrected to adopt these postures. This is a picture of liberation, which I find so resonant, and it's made by a Cuban artist during the Vietnam War. And it's a picture of Ho Chi Minh, and he's just sitting by a riverbank reading a book with his rubber sandals off. So there's no fireworks, there's no military parade. It's the symbol of liberation. There isn't a peak which goes down. So there's another way we can think about emancipation, just not always being about within a hedonistic sphere, but a contemplative one. And also within the tricontinental movement, internationalism. This is a still from the film Shy Radicals, which you can, it's now streaming online. It was touring film festivals. So certain geographies and cities and landscapes are quite formative. This is in Slovenia, in the former Yugoslavia, where you still have the sort of remnants of state socialism. And this is just me reading a book and adapting the landscape. The Shy Radicals film has a lot to unpack in terms of its landscapes too. So within the sphere of education in secondary school, often there's a lot of mocking from teachers for quiet, and also a lot of bullying from fellow peers, even if they may have come from the same demographic background as me. So within a Quaker house, the form of worship and being together just involves sitting together in silence, with no one being told what to do. So the film is also shot in Quaker houses too. And this, there's drop-in silences which are organised just by Leicester Square, which is the most busy square mile in London, I guess akin to Times Square. And as a sort of, thinking of that as a sort of form of resistance as well. And the need for it, for everyone. And this is more of the architecture that you'll see in the film. So the whole of, this is from the Jose Plesnik Library in Slovenia. And the whole of the city of Ljubljana is envisioned by one architect called Plesnik, who lived a very introverted life. And he has the same relationship to the city that Gaudi has to Barcelona. But the entire city, there's no point in which there's like a junction or like congestion, or it's just, even in its capital, when it becomes buzzing, it's never, there's always spaces for contemplation and silence, and hence it's integrated into the film's landscape. This is the Triple Bridge and the library, where you have open windows as books. And there were also sites of resistance during the Nazi occupation too. And the whole of Shy Radicals, which was done as a referendum within the city, has sort of been integrated back into landscape. I was very pleased with this. This is a children's guide, and a tourist guide to the Tivoli Park, where Kurt Cobain played his penultimate gig before his suicide, and Shy Radicals has been integrated. And I like this thing about the quiet kids and the squirrels. So yeah, Shy Radicals was, it sort of manifested in lots of ways. And I was invited to Ljubljana Biennial by Slavs and Tartars to adapt it to the city. So we held a referendum. This was just shortly after the Brexit referendum, and Slovenia was the first country to separate from Yugoslavia via referendum. And we won the referendum, actually. So I'm not just rhetorically the commander-in-chief. I actually have a democratic mandate in the city of Ljubljana. And just question the whole medium of electioneering in general. So laws were put around the city, and the ballot boxes was the lexicon of democracy. The election was held again in Poland, as a biennial travelled in this corner during the COVID crisis. And it strangely won by even a larger margin. I think also the COVID moment, which we still reflect on, was also quite revolutionary in terms of thinking about value and space. So aspects of the Constitution that I wrote, so for example, this article where you have the right to clear an empty space, had new readings. There's a great paper called Why COVID-19 Might Be Our Chance to Reimagine the Arts and Freeze, which I recommend you read. And during this period, you also had all these memes like Lisa Simpson saving the world and introversion, but you also learned to value the sort of labour of cleaners more, and there's this terms like essential workers. Also within Slovenia, you have this state which is built by artists on a 3 by 3 meters garden in run by a scarecrow. It's also the place of the Laibach and NSK state, which have all been quite inspiring to the book. This is so true. I'm quite cynical of online embodiments of introversion, but introvert too was something I actually always resonated with. So So extroverts may rule the world, but introverts create worlds. Part of the practice of shy radicals as a Tory is also identifying histories and icons. So you have various institutions in Britain like Black History Month, South Asian Heritage Month, and often the sort of icons of introversion, often people like, I don't know, Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. So I found introducing my own sort of canon and icon. So one of the people who've always been an inspiration to me is Patrick Pearse, who was the leader of the 1916 Easter Rising, which was the first major revolt when 90% of the world was under European colonialism, and it sort of resonated and sparked off rebellions in Harlem amongst the Afro-American population and Chittagong in Bangladesh, where my family are from. And he was always a shy, awkward man. So there was no need to be sort of a charismatic Che Guevara with a cigar, or I think figures like Russell Brand. So that always struck me that such a major revolt against power could be done by a shy, awkward person. One place I recommend to go if you ever visit Ireland is in Dublin. They've actually preserved the school he used to run. So he ran this school called St. Edna's, which was a school for quote-unquote sensitive and delicate boys, using some of the oral history. And it's somewhere I spent quite a lot of time with the autistic Irish artist Alice Lucy Ricard. And the entire environment and curriculum is built towards preserving the subjugated languages. So people were encouraged to identify with Irish mythological sagas, the colours of the environment, the routines around gardening and classification. And yeah, Patrick Pearse is someone retrospectively identified as autistic. Also within Britain, the welfare state and universal healthcare and the National Health Service was built by another shy person called Clement Attlee, who won 2 elections against Winston Churchill. This is a very typical portrait of him where he looks like a bank clerk, and he would just write a crossword or a poem or a limerick under a corner. This is the age of Mussolini and Adolf Hitler's podium gesture politics. And also the notion of the British welfare state also is in utopic and speculative literature too. So William Morris, who is part of the arts and crafts movement, is where a lot of the ideas stem from. Other cities take their constitutions very seriously. This is something I researched. So if you go to Philadelphia, you'll see the American Constitution built into the entire structure of the city and commemorated. So I also think about how to do this as an art practice. And when I was younger and at art school, my ambition was to be like Okwuon Ways or a sort of superstar curator, or involved in commissioning. And part of the journey of Shy Radicals in this ongoing tour is that it generates new collectives and works from concepts in the book, totally autonomously and totally as a sort of without any form of contact sometimes with myself. So there's this network was set up at the University of Manchester called Academics Against Networking, which was inspired by the book, against the tyranny of networking culture in academia. And it also took part in the strike. So the University Lecturer Union, UCU, went on strike. And they, instead of having megaphones at the strikes, they did these poetic readings. They also read the labour laws of Shy Radicals, Aspergistan state as part of that. So our economy and labour laws are Article 48, Aspergistan will ensure economic justice, esteem and recognition for introvert labour. The Shy Radicals movement recognised the historical invisibility, subjugation, exploitation and devaluing of introvert labour, which it seeks to reverse for a Sharia-compliant economy. Article 50, the show radicals movements recognise that economic justice is impossible in a celebrity-centric, model-centric, presenter-centric systems where outgoingness reigns supreme, or uneven economic and distributive power based on mass distraction is to be abolished. Researchers and those involved in behind-the-scenes jobs will be backpaid in full for their unrecognised work. Article 57, abolition of extrovert risk as embodied by boom and bust roller coaster economies, market speculation and inflated salaries. The state will promote employment alternatives to the city trade floor. Article 58, the state resists corporate melancholia in the form of commodification of introvert icons, culture, life, and or tragic human history. And this whole process of autonomous artworks keeps going on. So during the COVID crisis, this collective based in Brussels made these robots somewhere between a large ear and a horn, which would just wander around the city, and that was directly inspired by texts and show radicals. I often have no idea who these people are. Just if I'm Googling an old article or reference, so it's just something I stumble upon. Even this was a news TV channel on the planet Mars, where somehow the show radicals message reached. And it was about different colonizations and extractions of Mars. And it's very funny. And also in other formats, so this is a sound work made by a sound artist based on the lexicon of democracy. And gestures such as curling up on the floor or biting your nails. And also choreography. So this was in Purdue in Amsterdam. It was a Japanese choreography collective who did this dance performance. Even though I'm someone who's a wallflower, there's actually a lot of choreographers interested in the gestures in the work. So there's a work called Limbs of the Revolution being made by a Croatian choreographer, and people still developing work now. And there's other works which are made on a peer-to-peer basis. So this is the artist Ranavki who made this as a friendship gesture for another artist based in the city, in doll making and wood carving. So the whole language of the work goes on. This is a real fan in Italy, actually tattooed the Shy power slogan to their arm. And this is in Arnhem, with a wonderful institution which doesn't exist anymore called Zine Depot, and the Parasite. So a series of nations and automatic drawings were made. And that process goes on, which you'll hear later in the autistic turn. It's also integrated in education. There was a radio show called Psy Girls based on Susan Hiller's work, which was also directly connected, inspired to concepts in the book. And the other process which takes place is that, so my brother was in prison from 2006 to 2014, so I took a hiatus from the art world as someone who was his campaigner and sole spokesman. He was detained for 6.5 years under war and terror under the time of Bush and Blair, and so I had to keep his presence and humanity alive. And yeah, it was a very controversial thing at the time. And one of the sister campaigns that we linked up with was the Angola 3, who were one of the key Black Panther prisoner campaigns. So if you look at the history of solitary confinement in the US, you will also see the history of like suppressed movements. So the American Indian movement, movements against the imperialist interventions in Latin America, the Black Panthers, which you've heard of, the Young Lords. So there's a way of sort of subjugating consciousness. The Angola 3 were 3 Black Panthers who were held in solitary confinement for over 40 years, falsely for a murder, and eventually achieved freedom. And yeah, my brother used to write poetry whilst incarcerated, which had a big influence on my work, which also, in solitary confinement, you're held in a room the size of a bathroom with made of concrete with no human contact apart from strip searches. And 50% of suicides occur in this situation. So my brother wrote this poem, which called Ayadhistani, in the 7th year of his detention, and envisioning this landscape and this world. So Ayadhistani, so the world was divided into Hiristan and Theristan. You can't call it revenge if the killing occurred at the same time. Those killings feed into each other like the swirling figure of 8. In blood, the numbers grow, infinity groans and falls to his side. Murderers are best left unasked about their views on euthanasia. Each grapples for the beginning of blame as a knife-yielding hand reaches for the end. In conflict, their limbs are more entwined than the bodies of lovers wrestling over capital, disputed, both called murder bad. If only this Mobius strip simply existed in pastry and the roar of the mob was hot oil inside it. The geometry of death weaves a map with a pattern of disease across a terrain each calls mine. Where do you go? Where do you live? Is a country the one you will be born in or the one you died in? The vultures decide with their drop-ins. Those who yearn to belong to that country of birds whose geography is air are shot down by brats of catapults and made to endure hard labour in a cage. Your mother tongue is not the one you read or write, but in which you dream, laugh, and screaming under torture. Welcome to Otherstan. It is between the gaps of words, the hollows between syllables. The lingua franca is sighs, yawns, burps, and sneezes. Its rivers no better than running noses. Its hills and mountains disappointing as any lover's knees. Otherstan, a republic where each man is king because each woman is a kingmaker. Our national anthem is a minute's silence. Eventually, the abacus tips, the number of dead is too large, the sand timer is too heavy to lift, the fruits of branches grow rich with flesh, they plump out like cheeks swelled with vomit, the trees creak onto their knees, straighten their backs, and raise a head of laughter to the sun. The water rumbles with fish. O earth, 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 hear the word of Lord, be the better son of Adam, take an oath of fealty with me, I remain truly an Otherstan. So these were the poems my brother wrote in solitary confinement. There's certain things you may know from the Aspergistan constitution. So, for example, the national anthem of Aspergistan is listening to the seashell, which you can pick up on any beach. The national flags is a ... And that has its roots in connecting with my brother's daydreaming in this horrible situation. Shyness and introversion also been included in war and terror surveillance programs, so as a mark of suspicious community, so like isolating or seeing themselves. In Britain we have a program called the Prevent program, which monitors children in schools and every aspect of the welfare state, from cradle to grave. So during this period I was also just involved in campaigning against solitary confinement. The United States is the leading abuser of solitary confinement, so there's like 80% of, there's like, I think, at least 80,000 people. You may have heard of like Chelsea Manning and Guantanamo Bay, but these are things which take place within. So one of the campaigns I worked with was Solitary Watch, and they did this thing of asking prisoners in solitary confinement, subject to sensory deprivation, what landscapes they'd like to imagine, and picture requests. So this is one of them, who just wanted to see themselves behind a blue sky. And one of the artists who influenced me was Jackie Summel, who also curated. And she worked with one of the Angola 3, the Black Panther prisoners, asking, for a man who'd been in solitary confinement, what type of house would you dream of? Which also influences the vision of this future nation state. So Herman Wallace, who sadly died just shortly after being freed, imagines this house where you have swimming pools with Black Panther pools. And the project continues in this form of gardening where solitary confinement shells are used, cell sizes are used for plant beds of crops produced during slavery, such as tobacco and farming generally. I've also used Shy Radicals as a curatorial tool. So in The Hague, in Page Not Found, we did this program called Solitary Solidarity, which we looked at zine making during the COVID pandemic. and surviving through public publishing practices. And that was produced. So as this was an exhibition I did in Slovenia in 2021, and so you see the form of the prison cell reoccur again within the exhibition architecture. So this space here, which is made of various concrete materials, is also doubled up as a sort of teenage bedroom. So you have like posters from Edward Scissorhands and teenage movies and a zine library, and then looking out into the world. I think you can also see the shy power symbol out in the prison cell. And I also developed this map of the transnational journey of shy radicals, which has gone from Indonesia to Peru and Argentina, and all around the world. So I imagine things like if there was Aspergistan Pavilion at Venice Biennale, for example. So it's weaving between fact and fiction again. And the universe of shy radicals extends onwards. Purdue commissioned me around the time of the pandemic. There's a lot of commissions around care. And I wrote this letter to Amy Littlewood. So the first chapter I wrote in the Shy Radicals book is an interview with Amy Littlewood, which is the longest detained without trial Shy Radicals political prisoner. And so I wrote this letter to her as part of the work, and you'll see how the work lives through other forms. I think recently in Groningen in the Art Centre we did a fictional campaign for this political prisoner. So this is in sunny Queens Correctional Facility, Company Confinement Unit, Cell Block 113, 2nd of January 2020. Dear Amy Littlewood, the government is encouraging us all to adopt kittens. Collaborators and scabs, those integrated, de-radicalised, too diluted, too sold, have been taking part in a national PR stunt of introverts at home with their Netflix and kittens under state subsidy. This is my place too, the official slogan goes, beaming by awkward smile of the co-opted. Public billboards, charities, posters on the metro, subway underground. Public buses shows us with kittens, puppies, soft duvets, safe and secure at home. This is not our place. Until the world learns, all power to the introverts and neurodivergent. We know the image of the good introvert polices as much as the bad introvert. Amy, you would never sell us out, abandon our cause, and that's why you're behind bars. All those years without trial expose the reality of the extrovert state and its hollow rhetoric of justice and equal citizenship. The Homeland security astroturf has entered the coffee houses with solitary seating and black coffee banned in many states. 24-hour cafes have been banned to business hours and late nights registered to trendy club spaces, rave party, office networking, nothing outside the visibility of the high street. Our shy power signal has been hijacked on Instagram, and I urge all our followers to reclaim it. And I know you, our sister leader in the struggle, Amy, inspire fiscals despite all attempts to make you one of the pack. I have been misverted many times, Amy, and it hurts. Our movement lawyers have taken employment tribunals on this, and it was reduced to a scheme of diversity training. Or, you don't look normal to me, senior work colleagues say. Keep me in the lowest rank. How dare they limit us and what they can achieve in the public sphere? Official employment discrimination statutes are not enough when capital and parliament is extrovert normative. Don't they know that one of our kind, Patrick Pearse, led the Irish Easter Uprising against the colonial empire, or Labour leader Clement Attlee brought down tub thumpers and introduced the welfare state and universal healthcare whilst writing a poem in the corner? The day will come when we will seize the national curriculum and educate those time wasters. The world will not see another New Year's Eve #resist NYE. The World Day of Reckoning of the extrovert supremacy's Third Reich overlord will be resisted and defeated. World Introvert Day, it is actually officially World Introvert Day, on the 2nd of January, on the outside world, years since your incarceration, many office spaces, schools and public institutions. But is this really progress? I believe we should treat this day as May Day, internationalism, silent disruption. Some will stay at home with their kittens and mittens as the windows are shattered and their contemplative space is disrupted by fireworks. It is believed that our day comes after New Year's, so we can all coexist. But I propose at the next Intifada summit that it gives us 364 days of preparation to destroy that establishment institutions that all our people hate. Introvert refugee zones are not enough. Another world is breathing, Amy. I can hear it on a quiet day. Our liberation is bound together, Amy. I stare at the sky. We see the deepest indigo of the night, the horizon and the moon, and the stars that you see in your prison cell window. Our vision of the future cannot be obscured by their strobe light skyscrapers and neon emptiness. We are shy in tooth and claw, a homeland to come of hedgehog spikes, cave bats, night owls, festering worms in the earth. The world is our corner. In solidarity, Hamja Ahsan, Introvert, London Delegation, Commander-in-Chief. So the future of the work is just circulated through fans and readers. So Kathy Peng was an artist from Beijing. She mapped out the city of Beijing to me. So there were places where old people played chess and people being redeveloped and gentrified. And the various child pop icons like J2. And I found these tropes like the shy fat kid would translate across various nationalities. Also, the movement gets integrated into other progressive movements. So in Brazil, when Bolsonaro was in power, the sort of neoliberal, semi-fascist leader that he was against indigenous people, this artist from, he's not an artist, he's just a reader in Sao Paulo, integrated it into the Fora Bolsonaro movement and also made me this Antifa slogan with the Shy Radicals, Shy Power slogan. And the book's just been translated into Spanish by Argentinian publisher Caga Negra, who are wonderful. And so it's also been producing new bodies of work, again, autonomously. So this is a work done in Mexico, where this artist has developed embassies and visas for and I guess read it via the Zapatistas. I also find when I travel, there's other movements sort of going on autonomously and autonomously developing. So in Peru, there's a Neurodivergent picnic movement where they develop rules like delineate their social battery and letting people be late and not having eye contact. And they also try to integrate it into sort of policy as well. So I actually found in Peru, the book was quite readily understood, which I didn't imagine, and neurodiversity was internationally understood. So I'm currently writing, my second book was called Radical. My first book was called Shy Radicals, my second book is called Radical Chicken. And it's based on the documentary project I produced in 2020 where I did these fictional halal fried chicken chains around the city. And I've also made a Shy Radicals fried chicken chain as well, called Aspergistan Midnight Wings. So these were dotted all around the city, a bit like a critical intervention into the art institutions. There's a very large Muslim diaspora population in the city of Kassel and Documenta who are actually live in a semi-parallel world to the international art world. And then there's all these European museums. So I introduced fried chicken shops into the museum complex to give you some context. And Aspergistan Midnight Wings was developed. So in a lot of modern art institutions, you see quiet spaces developed, and also airports. And this was done in Documenta too. So you had quiet spaces in most of the galleries. So I did Aspergistan Midnight Wings and placed it right outside one of the quiet spaces. And I also did this constitutional amendment. So one of the constitutional points gives 24-hour access to archives and libraries and museums, and I also tea and coffee houses, and I added chicken shops as well. And it was just to enter into different time zones, because museums close just like offices. They'll close at 6 p.m, open at 10. So what happens to the world outside when the museums close or the institution? So you have this sort of nighttime economy. So these kebab shops that are open till 3 in the morning, or these 24-hour fried chicken shops or bagel shops, and sort of think in those time zones and think how neurodiversity could also be integrated into these other disruptive time zones. And part of the curatorial principle of Documenta was lumbung, so it was about sharing resources based on the Indonesian concept of the rice barn. So the concepts in the book also travel with the lumbung as well. So this was Resback, who was a activist collective campaign against the drug war in the Philippines, and how to create inclusive communities in other activist communities too. So even though the book travels the world, it also could be conceived as something that utopic state already exists. So partly Robot, who's an autistic blogger and zine maker who is part of the Show Radicals family, says he's already found the Aspergistan embassy, which is his comfortable sofa next to a bookshelf. The world is our corner. So thank you. So there will be a longer discussion at the end with the three artists, but I was told if anyone has any immediate questions or queries right now, please, there's a roaming mic there. I'm actually short-sighted as well, so I actually can't see if someone else has to.
I don't see it.
I'm also just around the city as well for the next 10 days, and I understand, what's it called, processing and reflection. So I had this extended period of time questioning thing. But yeah, we have some time for Q&A.
I want to say thanks, because I came at somewhere in between, but what I took from it was I have some notes and I really just appreciate what you're doing. I would say like I might be like an extrovert by nature, but I live with a lot of introverts, and I also appreciate like getting to like absorb that experience a bit, and also contemplating how like some of the examples like create spaces for people to just be their true selves and such. But I wondered how you kind of got started. Maybe I missed that part, but I wondered how you got started, like seeing that gap and kind of building your objectives of your work.
So thanks for the question. I first can respond to your point about identifying extrovert. So Show Radicals has it also has an extrovert fan base as well. So you meet these extroverts and they say, sometimes you get a well-meaning extrovert and they're like, oh, how can I help you people, and like that. Sometimes they say it made them a more sensitive person, or things they didn't think about before. I'd say I say Show Radicals also existed in my heart, but I would say, I think primary and secondary school bullying, and so people would like, if someone bullies you for like race or class or gender, you have lineages that you can turn to, which are consoling. So the suffragettes movement, the American Civil Rights movement, Black Lives Matter, the trade union movement. So there wasn't anything. But I found the majority of the time someone would like literally hit me or ostracize me would be for being quiet. It was just intolerable. And that experience in a playground or secondary school then would just embody itself. So I would be, I became very depressed in my early teens. From about 13, I started to feel suicidal. And then not simply accepting the sort of biomedical model of psychiatry and diagnosis and viewing it embodied in social systems. And yeah, that's the first one. And then I find that model of the Mean Girls table in like high school, or the loud playground, would replicate itself in other structures. So the workplace, so the corporate office, or even these metaphors from teen movies are like, when we think of Donald Trump, those same metaphors are used, the high school jock, corridor bully. So you think this, and when Labour lost the election in the lame neoliberal Social Democratic Party in 2015, it was said, because Ed Miliband was a nerd. So I found this interesting, that even at this highest level of executive power, these terms are still being used. And yeah, wanting a better world and meeting others who'd had these experiences. So that's where it all stems from. But I sort of rewatch things. There's certain things from my teenage years which I reflect on. One of the big events was Kurt Cobain's suicide, which I reflect on for the last 30 years. And I thought also watching, I grew up with a lot of sort of 80s teen movies, like Winona Ryder films, like Heathers, and rewatching them, but in your 30s, and then rethinking how those structures of power still, even in a leftist movement, or a movement with the rhetorics of equality, you still see those same structures of exclusion.